Roy has not found a way still to get a sustained attack against him.
And down goes Jones on a hard left hand, and that is the most that Roy Jones has ever been hurt.
Roy Jones Jr. went 49 fights without a real loss. Held titles in 4 weight classes and beat a heavyweight at 193 pounds. Then the judges stole his gold medal. The sport destroyed his body, and his own son took his life. This is how a man who had everything watched it all disappear. Built in a cage, Roy Levesta Jones Jr. was born in Pensacola, Florida. His father, Roy Jones Sr., was a Vietnam War veteran who earned a Bronze Star for valor and a middleweight boxer who ran his own gym. On paper, that sounds like a kid born into the sport. In practice, it was something else. Jones Sr. did not just train his son, he punished him. The line between coaching and abuse did not exist in that household. There were verbal taunts designed to break his spirit and physical punishments that went far beyond any reasonable definition of discipline. Jones Jr. described living in his father's cage where there was no escape, no excuse, and no way out. His father would pull up to the house in his truck and immediately start looking for something the boy had done wrong. If he found it, and he always found it, beatings followed.
I said, now I don't have to move tonight. You know, I told you my dad made us move 25 rounds a night, at least. Every night we're gonna get 25 rounds of movement.
That was the twisted thing about Roy Jones Jr. He loved violence because violence was all he knew. His father's gym was not a place of learning. It was a place of survival. Jones Sr. made his son move for 25 rounds a night at minimum. Every single night, 25 rounds of movement drills. It shaped him into one of the fastest fighters who ever lived. But it came at a cost that no championship belt could ever repay.
Easiest way to fight, because of course you're gonna get hit more.
25 rounds every night. Not some nights, not fight camp nights, every single night of his childhood. That kind of relentless drilling turned Roy Jones Jr. into a machine. But the boy inside that machine wanted to die. He contemplated suicide as a child because the pain never stopped. He stated in interviews that after a while he did not care about getting hurt or dying anymore because he was in pain all day every day. His father also exposed him to fighting. And that ugly spectacle of 2 creatures fighting until one of them could not stand anymore became a kind of metaphor for how Roy understood competition. You win or you die. There was no in between. But here's the thing about forges. They break most things they touch. The few things that survive come out harder than anything around them. Roy Jones Jr. survived. And by the time he stepped into the amateur circuit, he was not just good. He was a problem that nobody in his weight class had an answer for. His amateur record was 121 wins and 13 losses. He won the 1984 National Junior Olympics at bantamweight. He won the 1986 National Golden Gloves at light welterweight. Then did it again in 1987 and 1988. He reached the semifinals of the 1986 Goodwill Games before losing. But none of that mattered compared to what was coming next. At 19 years old, Roy Jones Jr. walked into the 1988 Seoul Olympics as one of the youngest members of the United States boxing team, competing in the light middleweight division at 156 pounds. He was about to have the biggest fight of his life, and the judges were about to make sure he lost it. His path through the tournament was not competitive. It was a clinic. He knocked out Matendra Makalamba of Malawi in the first round. Unanimous decision over Mikhail Fronik of Czechoslovakia. Unanimous decision over Yevgeny Zaitsev of the Soviet Union, breaking Zaitsev's nose in the process. Unanimous decision over Richie Woodhall of Great Britain, breaking Woodhall's nose too. Jones never lost a single round in any of those fights. He was breaking noses for fun at the Olympics, and nobody could touch him. Then came the gold medal bout at the Jamsil Students' Gymnasium in Seoul. His opponent was Park Sai-hun, a 23-year-old South Korean fighter representing the host nation. What happened in that ring and what happened on the scorecards were 2 completely different events. By every measurable standard, Jones demolished Park. The official punch stats showed Jones landed 86 punches to Park's 32. That is nearly 3 times as many clean shots. The round-by-round breakdown was even more damning. Round 1, 20-3 for Jones. Round 2, 30-15. Round 3, 36-14. Park received 2 standing 8 counts and was warned twice by referee Aldo Leon. NBC commentator Marv Al Valair declared on the broadcast that Park Se-hun had stolen the bout. Except Park did not steal anything. The judges did. The verdict came in as a 3-2 split decision for Park Se-hun. Judges from Hungary and the Soviet Union scored the fight correctly for Jones, both at 60-56. The judges from Morocco and Uruguay each scored it at 59-58 for Park. The judge from Uganda scored it at 59-59, but gave the fight to Park on aggressiveness, which given the punch stats is like giving the award for best driver to the guy who caused the pileup. Referee Aldo Leon whispered to Jones in the ring, "I can't believe they're doing this to you." Jones buried his head in a towel to hide his tears, but accepted the silver medal. Even Park Se-hun knew it was wrong. He raised Jones's hand in a show of sportsmanship, and the crowd booed because everybody in that building knew what had just happened. The aftermath was swift. USA Boxing called it one of the worst decisions in Olympic history. All 3 pro-Park judges were suspended for 6 months by IBA, the governing body of amateur boxing. 2 of them, the judges from Uruguay and Morocco, were later banned for life from Olympic judging. The Moroccan judge, Yowad Lar Bai, admitted after the fight that he scored for Park to avoid embarrassing the host nation, expecting a 4-1 Jones victory anyway. He thought his one bad scorecard would not matter. He was wrong. An IOC investigation found no concrete evidence of bribery, but in 1996, East German Stasi documents surfaced suggesting payments had been made to favor South Korean boxers at the Seoul Games. Whether money changed hands or whether it was simply cowardice from judges afraid to score against the home team, the result was the same. Roy Jones Jr., who outlanded his opponent 86-32, who never lost a round in the entire tournament, who broke the noses of 2 opponents on his way to the final, went home with a silver medal. The one consolation was the Val Barker Trophy, awarded to the most technically proficient boxer of the Games. Jones was only the 3rd non-gold medalist to ever receive it. It was like telling someone they were the best player in the Super Bowl, but giving the trophy to the other team. The loss contributed to depression and suicidal thoughts that followed Jones for years. For a kid who had already wanted to end his life because of his father's abuse, the Olympic robbery was not just a bad scorecard. It was confirmation that the world was rigged against him. And so he turned professional with a simple philosophy. If you leave it to the judges, they will take it from you. Better to leave no doubt. The untouchable Roy Jones Jr. turned professional and made a statement immediately. He knocked out Ricky Randall. Then he knocked out the next guy and the next one and the one after that. His first 15 fights all ended in knockouts. 15 men walked into the ring with Roy Jones Jr. and 15 men did not make it to a scorecard. After what happened in Seoul, you understand why he did not want to let judges anywhere near his fights. By 1993, Jones had gone 26 fights undefeated, and it was time for a world title. The IBF middleweight championship fight was against Bernard Hopkins. Hopkins was no pushover. He would go on to become one of the greatest middleweights in history. But on that night, Jones won a unanimous decision with scores of 116-112. He defended that belt 4 times before vacating it because the middleweight division could no longer hold what Roy Jones Jr. had become. He moved up to super middleweight and immediately went after the biggest name available. James Toney was undefeated, a defensive wizard with a mouth that wrote checks his chin could usually cash. Jones cashed it for him. He won a unanimous decision and scored a knockdown, dethroning Toney in a performance that earned him Fighter of the Year honors for 1994. He defended the super middleweight title 5 times with a kind of showmanship that made people forget they were watching a sport and not a performance. In one defense against Vinny Pazienza, Pazienza landed 0 punches in an entire round, while Jones picked him apart with his signature Captain Hook left hook from a Philly shell defense. 0 punches for 3 full minutes. One professional boxer could not land a single punch on another professional boxer standing right in front of him.
Yet, if you're the better puncher or you're the stronger fighter, you're going to overpower the person. So that's why we loved it.
Jones made everything look easy because for him, fighting had been the easy part since he was a child. The hard part was the life outside the ring. Inside those ropes, he had total control. He would put his hands behind his back and dodge punches, taunting opponents while making elite boxers look like they were swinging at a ghost. The crowd loved it. HBO loved it. The boxing world had not seen anything like Roy Jones Jr. since Sugar Ray Leonard. And some argued Jones was faster than Leonard ever was.
Do you have any questions? I got a question. You got any excuses tonight, Roy? Let's not ask questions like that. Let's touch gloves, go to work.
And overpower people he did. The light heavyweight division was next, and Jones took it apart piece by piece. He won the interim WBC light heavyweight title against Mike McCallum with a unanimous decision. Then came the only real blemish on his record before the decline. Montel Griffin beat Jones by disqualification when Jones hit him after a knockdown. It was the kind of loss that counts on paper but means nothing in reality, like getting a speeding ticket in a parking lot. Jones proved the point in the rematch, knocking Griffin out in the first round. Conversation over. Jones then went on a title unification run that turned the light heavyweight division into his personal property. He beat Reggie Johnson by unanimous decision to become the undisputed light heavyweight champion. He beat Lou Del Valle by unanimous decision for the WBA belt. He stopped Otis Grant. Every fight was a showcase. He held 12 unified light heavyweight title defenses, a record that stands as a monument to how completely he owned that weight class. Nobody wanted to fight him because fighting Roy Jones Jr. was not a career opportunity. It was a career funeral. Then Jones did something that nobody thought was possible. Not difficult, not unlikely, genuinely thought to be impossible by people who understood how the physics of boxing worked. Roy Jones Jr., who weighed in at 193 pounds, fought John Ruiz for the WBA heavyweight championship.
Ruiz WAD 226 lbs.
That is a 33 pounds difference. Jones was a natural middleweight, a man who had once fought at 160 pounds, stepping into the ring with a legitimate heavyweight. He was the first former middleweight champion to win a heavyweight title in over a century, and the first light heavyweight to accomplish it since Michael Spinks in 1985. He won by unanimous decision, moving around a man who outweighed him by 33 pounds like Ruiz was wading through cement. He earned his second Fighter of the Year award. And at that moment, the conversation was simple. Roy Jones Jr. was not just the best boxer of his generation. He was on the short list for the best boxer who had ever lived. He had won world titles at middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight. 4 weight classes spanning 66 lbs from bottom to top. And then, like every myth, the fall began. Jones vacated the heavyweight belt because staying at that weight permanently was not realistic for his frame. He dropped back to light heavyweight. And in doing so, he dropped something else. His body, which had ballooned up to 193 pounds, now had to shrink back down. And the rapid weight fluctuation did things to his physiology that no amount of talent could compensate for. The explosiveness that made him untouchable started to erode. The reflexes that had let him dodge punches with his hands behind his back slowed down just enough to make the difference between entertainment and exposure. He fought Antonio Tarver and won a majority decision, but it was not the kind of dominant performance the boxing world was used to seeing from Jones. Tarver made it competitive, and that in itself was a warning sign. The question was no longer whether Jones could be beaten. The question was how badly it would happen, and how soon. The answer came. Glass jaw. That was the scene before the second Tarver fight. Tarver asked Jones if he had any excuses, and the room felt different. There was a cockiness in the air that had nothing to do with Jones for once. It belonged to Tarver. And for the first time in Roy Jones Jr.'s career, the cockiness from the other side was justified. In the second round, Tarver landed a counter-left hook that put Jones flat on his back. It was not a flash knockdown. It was not a slip that got ruled a knockdown. Roy Jones Jr. was unconscious before he hit the canvas. The man who had gone 49 fights with only a disqualification loss. The man who had beaten a heavyweight, the man who had 47 knockouts on his record, was lying face up on the mat staring at the ceiling lights with nobody home behind his eyes. The referee stopped the fight. Second round TKO loss. Jones's first legitimate defeat. And the knockout did not just end the fight. It ended the version of Roy Jones Jr. that the world thought was untouchable. Whatever protective instinct his chin had possessed before that punch, it never came back. Fighters talk about a crystal chin. And after the Tarver knockout, that is exactly what Jones had. A chin made of glass that could shatter at any moment, and it shattered often. Glenn Johnson knocked Jones out with a right hand. 2 devastating knockout losses within 90 days. Jones was 35 years old, and the speed that had been his entire identity was leaving him like water draining from a bathtub. You could see it happening round by round, fight by fight. The reflexes that used to let him slip punches by millimeters were now letting punches land by inches. And in boxing, inches are the difference between a highlight reel and a stretcher. The third Tarver fight came, and there was no knockout this time, but only because Tarver did not need one. He won a unanimous decision, outboxing a diminished Jones for 12 rounds without breaking a sweat. 3 fights with Tarver. A controversial win, a knockout loss, and a clear decision loss. The trilogy told the story of Jones's decline better than any analyst ever could. The losses kept coming with the regularity of a schedule nobody wanted to keep. He fought Joe Calzaghe and lost a unanimous decision, suffering a black eye and cuts that made his face look like it had been through a car wreck. Danny Green TKO'd him in the first round in Australia, though Jones disputed the result due to issues with Green's hand wraps. Bernard Hopkins, the same man Jones had beaten 17 years earlier, beat him by unanimous decision. The symbolism of that loss was brutal. Hopkins had gotten better with age. Jones had gotten worse. Same sport, same era, opposite trajectories. Then came the fight that should have been the final warning. Denis Lebedev knocked Jones out, and the circumstances of that knockout were disturbing. Reports indicated that Lebedev hit Jones while he was going down, a punch that nearly put him in a coma. This was not competitive anymore. This was dangerous. Jones was 42 years old, and the sport he had once made look like a dance was now trying to put him in a hospital bed, but Jones kept fighting. He picked up minor titles in lower-profile bouts and won enough to justify continuing, at least in his own mind. Enzo Maccarinelli knocked him out with a brutal uppercut that left him unconscious yet again. He tore his biceps, and his final professional fight was a unanimous decision win over Scott Sigmon, when Jones was 49 years old fighting with a torn biceps, because apparently that is what you do when you do not know how to be anything other than a fighter. After starting his career 49-1 with the one being a meaningless disqualification, Jones finished with 10 losses and 5 stoppages. The numbers tell you what happened. The highlight reels from his losses tell you how it looked, and neither one is pleasant viewing. But the physical damage from the punches was only the surface layer of what all those years in the ring had done to him. Jones was already seeking experimental treatment for balance issues related to head trauma. He worked with chiropractor Dr. Charles Simovich to try to rehabilitate cranial bone movement as a way to heal from concussions. The fact that a former pound-for-pound king was visiting a chiropractor for experimental brain trauma treatments while still actively fighting tells you everything you need to know about how the sport treats its veterans. Experts like Dr. Tad Seifert warned that boxers over 40 face significantly heightened risks of cognitive damage and brain injury. Every punch, even the ones that do not knock you out, chips away at the brain's ability to function. Subconcussive blows from sparring sessions, the ones nobody counts and nobody remembers, are often the most dangerous because they accumulate silently over decades. Jones knew this. He understood the science personally because he had met boxer Jimmy Young when he was 17 years old, and Young could barely speak due to CTE. Jones has spoken about that meeting repeatedly, describing it as a moment that should have scared him away from the sport entirely. He said that every blow you take to your head counts. That every single impact adds up toward a day when the words stop coming and the balance disappears and the person you used to be becomes a stranger living in your own body. He knew this at 17. He kept fighting until he was 49. And then because retirement apparently was not an option, he came back for an exhibition against Mike Tyson that ended in a draw and sold 1.6 million pay-per-view buys. He even fought. Alright everyone, stay tuned for the latest in boxing news, highlights, events and stories. Subscribe to Combat Motive and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Be sure to watch our other videos too. Until next time, take care and stay safe.